I'm Perry Groves, and this is a Bergkamp Wonderland.
Hello and welcome to a Bergkamp Wonderland, an Arsenal podcast. I'm your host, FK, stepping in for Gimli, who seems to have some sort of technological issues. I'm sure Danny, our producer, can fill us on that. Danny, the GFP, how are you?
Oh, I'm very good, sir. How are you?
I'm very well, but what is wrong with Gim?
Oh, I think he's living in the deepest, darkest recesses of Wales and living in the top of a valley, if that's even possible. He's just had problems with his old laptop, bought a new laptop. The new laptop isn't working, can't get the wonderful people at Skype to help him, and so he's either going to need a third laptop because he's going to put some Welsh justice on his new one, while the old one has been sent away to be fixed. So, he's all in a kerfuffle.
Oh dear, we'll pray for Gimli. I'm also delighted to have Geoff, Arsenal, on the podcast. Geoff, how are you, my man?
I'm cool, buddy. It's been a while. It seems like it's been a long while.
It's been so long. I was looking forward to being back on the pod myself. I haven't been on it for ages, and to be thrown into the hot seat as host is something else. But are you well, though? You good? Despite a tough week?
Very, very well. Thank you very much. You know me, I'm always the optimist, FK.
You are indeed. Well, we'll see what your thoughts are on Anderlecht in just a second. But last but by certainly no means least, Raj, great to have you back on the show as well. So how are you doing?
Oh, hello, you little Asian Theophilus P. Wildebeest. How are you?
I'm not too bad, man. Great to be back. How have you been?
It's been a long time. I can't remember last time I was on here. I think I've been let out of the cage tonight, like a gimp or something with a snooker ball in my mouth. So I've just got to take the snooker ball out and just start talking and ranting, I suppose. But there you go.
Well, top man, well, it's great to have you back. We've also got a special segment with special guest Perry Groves later on in the show, so that's something to look forward to, listeners. But we'll get cracking as per normal. Scores on the doors. Danny, what's happened in the last week?
Okie dokie, right. The 4th of November, actually I'll do it going backwards. 4th of November, unfortunately, we had the Under-19s Champions League game. It was Arsenal 1, Anderlecht 2. Dan Crowley scored his 5th goal in 3 games. So I think we're still going to qualify from that group for the next round because Dortmund aren't doing very well. But yeah, it's a bit of a shock that I think they beat us 4-3 at their place a few weeks ago in their back-to-back games. Then in the Under-18s on 31st of October, they were lost at home 2-0 to West Brom. That wasn't very good. 31st of October, the Under-21s beat Middlesbrough 2-1. Super Dan Crowley got 2 of those goals. I mean, this bloke is an absolute legend of a playing in the making. So we're now top of the Under-21s league. We're 6th in the Under-18s league. And I forgot to say last podcast that the women's, the Arsenal ladies season is all over. We finished 4th in the league. We got to the quarter-final of the Women's Champions League. We won the FA Cup, beating Everton 2-0 for the 13th time. And I think the team that's won it the next amount of times is about 5 or 6 times. And we lost 1-0 a couple of weeks ago in the League Cup final to Man City and all their money. So that's the ladies all over and done with, and their season starts, I think, around March next year. So it's going to be a tough time because the likes of Man City, Liverpool and Chelsea, they've all got loads and loads of money and have mostly gone pro, and we haven't. So I think the glory days might not be as easy to get hold of as they were in the past. And plus, we'll have no European football next season because it's only the top 2 that go into the Women's Champions League. So there you go.
Well, it's funny you mentioned Dan Crowley because there's a lot of hype about him, and there was a comment that amused me a couple of weeks back. I think we'd lost the game, and the reporter had asked him, "So how do you think the game went?" And he was like, "I've not really played to my best, but it's always nice to get a hat trick." And I thought that just made me laugh. He scored a hat trick, and he was just playing it off as if it was regular football for him. All right, well, thanks a lot for that, Danny. I mean, obviously, going back to Arsenal, the senior men's team, we look back at the weekend. We played Burnley, beat them 3-0 at home, and that was the first time that we'd recorded consecutive league wins this season. I may as well open with you, Danny. I mean, beating Burnley 3-0, what did you think about the game and how do you think it went?
Well, last Saturday, I didn't do the radio show because the Friday night before we'd had Chinese. I had a bit of a dicky belly, so I laid in bed all day listening to it on the radio. And I remember talking in the WhatsApp group saying it doesn't really sound like much of a game, doesn't sound like much is going on, so there's really not much of a match to talk about. Then I got up and I saw we had 32 shots at goal. 30. That's our highest all season. I think our next highest is 25 against who was it a couple of weeks ago? I think it may be a Hull or someone like that. And then we had 12 shots on target, 10 off target, 1 hit the woodwork, and 10 were blocked. With their goalkeeper Heaton having the game of his life. I know Raj wants to mention something about Heaton, but I watched the game afterwards on Match of the Day, and I thought, I mean, I'm just looking now at WhoScored.com. Sanchez got 10 out of 10. which is every game recently he's been getting 9.6, 9.7. But I think we could easily have won that game 10-0. That could have easily, if it weren't for Heaton having the game of his life, like so many goalkeepers do when they play us, I think we could have broken the Premier League goal scoring record. But yeah, well done to Burnley for hanging in there for so long, and well done to Sanchez and the entire team. And it was one of those games where you thought, oh, imagine if you'd have been there, you'd have had to be on steroids.
Yeah, absolutely right, Geoff. I mean, before the game, when we do our predictions, I think everybody was quite confident about what the score would be. It took us a while to get going. Obviously, Sanchez breaking the deadlock after 70 minutes. What are your thoughts on the game? And obviously, Sanchez, his progress, he seems to be digging us out at the minute. But how did you think the game went?
Oh, you know what? When we kept on it, we had loads of chances. I just thought to myself, you know what? Is this one of those games where we kept on? We just, the goalkeeper had a great game, and while we kept on putting it wide, and creating fantastic chances, but then we're not scoring the goals. And we've had those games before, up and down the times where you can't get a goal. Then fantastic leap by Sanchez on the 70 minutes to get that goal. I mean, we controlled the game. Everything was fine. But then until you get that goal, you never know. But once we scored that goal, we knew we was going to push on to crack away. Sanchez, you know what? The jury was out with me at the start when we first bought him, because although I'd seen a lot of him at Barcelona, he had a lot of really, really good players around him. So you never know how they're going to fit in. And he has been an absolute sensation, and I really do think he can be our Luis Suarez, the one that we couldn't get. I see him as eventually as a number 9. I really do, because I think he's got that ability, the low centre of gravity. He's very quick. He's got great feet. Any sight on goal, he'll have a shot. I think he can go and get us 30 goals a season in the future. But. I mean, he's been fantastic for Arsenal, and let's just hope he could just continue. But apart from that, it was a 3-0 win. I'm glad we got the 3 points, and it give us great confidence.
Well, just going back to your point about Sanchez, obviously Arsene Wenger was asked about comparisons to Luis Suarez. I think everyone is really impressed by his work rate, his technique. Do you think that Arsene Wenger may just be running him into the ground? I mean, I recall him playing against Southampton as well in the League Cup. Can he carry on at 110 miles an hour?
Well, you tell you what it is. How I see it is, he's a new player. He's come to the club. He didn't struggle a little bit, but I think we expected a little bit more from him. He was giving the ball away a little bit too much rather than keeping possession in key areas. And once we're all bombing forward and he loses the ball, in the final third, we've all got to bomb back again. And we got found out a couple of times, didn't we? We had a few near misses and stuff. But once he's got that form, he's got in a bit of form now, and it's hard to not play him because he's in that bit of form and he's got confidence. I'm no doubt they're monitoring. He looks as fit as a fiddle. I don't think he's going to miss that many games. Honestly, I really don't. I mean, you see him. He's very, very fit. He's so enthusiastic, and once he's got that confidence, it is very, very difficult to stop playing him. That's how I see it.
Geoff, sorry, I see what you're saying, but I actually said this on Twitter the other day. I'm getting a bit worried, and FA just asked the question for me. He's playing so well that I do worry about, whether we're overplaying. I mean, I looked at his stats for this season, and out of, I think, approximately 1,500 minutes that he could have played, he's played like 1,330, which is quite a lot for a forward player who does put a lot of energy in that 90 minutes. Isn't that a worry, though? I mean, you guys, you must share the same feeling.
Yeah, it was a little bit worrying, obviously, because especially with our track record, with all the muscle injuries and stuff like that, you'd think that. But I'm sure they're on it. They're fully aware that the whole world's watching how we perform this year with regards to injuries because of the record that we've got. So I'm sure they're on it. I'm sure they're monitoring him, and you just got to trust them, I suppose, to see how it pans out.
He does seem very fit, though, because, again, I was being a bit of a stato, a bit like Danny today. And he hasn't, looking at it in the past, he hasn't actually had that many injuries over the last 4 or 5 seasons. The worst one he's had he was out for about 50 days. But the others have only been 3 days here, 4 days here. And he's only had 5 injuries altogether. So I'm sure they know that. So, I mean, I suppose maybe he's just strong enough to do all this. But, it's still a bit of a worry anyway.
I would agree with you, Raj. I think he's been fantastic since he's come in. He's obviously established himself fairly quickly as one of our talismen, if you like. He's got so much energy. His work rate, he's pressing from the front. And sometimes you see on action replays when he's pressing and he's calling for the other players to get up the pitch and press. And I think maybe that's just like a Barcelona thing. I mean, those players were super fit. I do worry that at some point he'll just hit a brick wall. I mean, it's been quite funny hearing some of the Arsenal players come out and say things like, Alexis is just crazy in training. We tell him to calm down, all that kind of stuff. And Theo Walcott the other day, interestingly, said on the radio that whatever Alexis does, whether it's just ping pong heading in training, whether it's sprinting, he just wants to win. He's hungry, and you can see that actually in the header. Geoff touched upon the impressive header, the first goal against Burnley. He starts his run from outside the box, and as someone who's 5 foot something, he wants it. He wants it so much, and it's great to see as a fan. So hopefully Wenger will manage him. But speaking about, speaking about possible people to come in and maybe give him a breather, Theo Walcott, Raj, came on in the 80th minute to make his first return since, I think, getting injured on the 4th of January. So he's been out for 10 months. Great to see him back. And what sort of role do you think he'll play?
I think he'll be a foil to Alexis in some ways. I think at some point Sanchez will need a rest, and Theo could step in. I mean, he did that last 15, 20 minutes the other day, and he had a bit of zip about him. Someone's interestingly said online that the kind of injury he had is actually going to make him a bit faster, which I find hard to believe. But if he is faster, then it's going to be quite exciting over the next few weeks, especially when they all play together. Get Ozil back in the team as well, and then we'll see what it's like. So I think it's very positive. Yeah,
and with Giroud rumoured to be back in training next week as well, I think Giroud with his hold-up play, I think only players like Walcott and Sanchez are going to thrive, and it'd be great to see Ozil back. Well, that's the Burnley game. We didn't want to fixate on that too much, and unless anyone's got anything to add, if we can maybe move on to Anderlecht, to the complete contrast, the other end of the spectrum. Going into the Anderlecht game, we were all quite confident. The smash and grab win away in Belgium last week, we thought we'd maybe get the job done and even get qualifications sorted. 3-0 up to go 3-3 at full time. Geoff, I'm going to go straight to you. Disastrous result, and what do you think? What do you think led to collapse?
It's not a disastrous result because we can still qualify. I think we will qualify, but it's just unbelievable how so amateurish and it's just ill-disciplined because you're 3-0 up. You should really be able to. It's in-game management. I said this before against when we played Chelsea and when we played when we got done at 6-0 at Chelsea and the Liverpool game last year. When you're under the cosh, right, you've got to have a player on the pitch, at least one player on the pitch that can just get hold of the game and say, right, let's just sit in here for 10 or 15 minutes before we start, going forward again, because sometimes you've got to batten down the hatches, and for Arsenal to not have that player with all those players on the pitch, you got players that have won the World Cup on the pitch. They should have the experience, and especially defenders. Defenders know when it's on them, and they should be able to sense it. They should be able to feel it, and they should have we should have someone on there. Per does a little bit of shaking about, and he points and everything else, but he should have got hold of the centre midfield players and said, right, you two just sit there for 10, 15 minutes. We're 3-0 up. Let's just see this game out. Bore the pants off of everyone if we've got to, right? But we don't need to go forward and all the fullbacks running forward. And it was absolutely crazy. And the in-game management, and I do blame the players, because there should be someone, once you cross that line, there's not a lot Arsene Wenger can do, right? He'll try and get messages across, but those experienced players, they should know what to do. And it was unbelievable. It was embarrassing, really. We should never have got ourselves in that position. But you know what? When it went 3-1, it had 3-3 written all over it. I was inside the stadium, and I think everyone could feel we're under the cosh here. They're going to score again. And once they score again, once there would have been a momentum, it was just incredible. And I could see it happening in front of my eyes. And it was terrible.
Well, the thing that bugs me is that actually, before we'd even scored our first goal, the hints were there. Anderlecht were carving us open with ease, and they had a couple of good breakaways straight down the middle. And I think maybe it's because of the position I sit. I sit North Bank lower, right behind the goal, and I've got this central view where you just see gaps between left back, centre back, and right back and centre back. Now, Arsene Wenger in his post-match press conference actually came out and said that we looked poor defensively from the first minute Now, apart from just stating the obvious and saying, well, here's an idea, get some better centre-backs, get a central defensive midfielder, a question to you, Geoff, and to Raj as well. I mean, when I look at the Arsenal setup, the shape, the positional discipline, I look at it and I think we're weak sometimes, and that's got to come from Arsene Wenger. That's not, you can say the players have got, the players are only good enough as they are. Yep, at 3-1, the boss could be shouting from the touchline saying, tighten up, let's get a result here, lads, see the game out. I completely appreciate that, Geoff, but it happens time and time again, and we're lucky that we don't concede more than we do. We're lucky that we score. We outscore a lot of teams and get points on the board. But sometimes the gaps are gaping. Why is that happening, Raj?
Well, the funny thing was that at the end of the game, Arsene Wenger came out with his interview and he said one of the reasons why all this happened was fatigue. And I kind of laughed to myself because he said that in the past and used it as an excuse. But having thought about it, it probably is. I mean, we haven't got much rotation going on, so people are getting tired, especially at the back. We haven't got the defenders that we need due to mistakes we may have made in the transfer window, and it's slowly coming to bite us on the arse now. And it's just frustrating, really, because we know what the solutions are, but I don't think we'll have that time to repair them now this season. We just got to get on with it. But fatigue, yeah, he's right. He's right, actually, Arsene Wenger, but it's probably down to him why they're tired.
I watched the press conference. And I feel for him. Everyone who listens to this show will know how much I love the man, and I still think he's the right man for the job, despite his flaws. What really bugs me is that he makes it hard for himself and completely unnecessarily. I can't remember who it was, but some journalist just randomly went out on a rant saying, saying your teams can't defend, your shape's all wrong. It happens time and time again. Last season you got spanked 3-4 times away whilst away from home, and he gives this answer like, we were poor, we were this, we were that, but he could make it so much easier for himself, and he just becomes so much harder to defend. Geoff, you're a staunch supporter of Arsene Wenger, like I am, maybe even more so. But why does he get it wrong?
Well, with regard to what tactics or how we didn't replace in the summertime.
I think most people would probably agree that Flamini's probably a bit of an average footballer at best. Arteta, great servant to the club, was brought in at a time when we needed him, but he's probably now a bit not good enough for the big games. Why couldn't he have addressed that? And Monreal, there's been a lot of criticism for him. To be fair to the boy, he's done really well, but at fault for the penalty during the week, we could have bought, surely.
Well, I understand what you're saying, but I mean, the fact is that maybe Wenger didn't think that he was going to purchase or someone that was available that would better the squad. And you just got to trust him, haven't you? I know we all get frustrated. I've said it before. I would like to sign all these players, so everyone would. But if they're not available, then I'm sure he's not stupid. He knows what he wants. I don't think it's stubbornness. I just think it's if the players are not there that he really wants, then he's going to wait until he gets those type of players. Monreal, I mean, I think he's done really well since he's been back in the central defensive position. He's made one mistake, and it was a silly mistake. But everyone was crucifying him over it. But to be honest with you, that's the only thing he didn't. It was the first thing he put wrong all night long. I think it's quite harsh.
Actually, it's probably not a bit boring now to go on about. I just did it myself, and I should have said it probably, but it's a bit boring to go on about what we didn't do and stuff in the summer. What I'm trying to say is that it's going to bite us on the arse though, because it's not going to get any better. I don't think. We just don't have those backup players in the squad that can ease the pressure off our current first 11. And we're so kind of susceptible to injuries these days that you never know who's going to be out next. So. I think I'm more philosophic now. I wasn't out. I kind of got a bit pissed off with it when I was watching the last half hour on Tuesday, but I'm not as kind of outraged by it now, and I kind of tend to not go over the top now. I just want to see what happens with the rest of the season.
I mean, it's a fair point, Raj. And actually, what Geoff was saying about, it's not. I think too many people nowadays, they think buying players is so easy. They're obviously influenced by the likes of FIFA and Football Manager. There are so many intricacies to buying players, so many different people to please and to get on board before you can actually sign someone. But I guess if you can't find the right players, Geoff, and if you can't find the right replacements to cover all these injuries and add sufficient squad depth, then your team shape's got to be right. The number of teams that play so defensive, that play really tight and compact, and they slow down the tempo, we seem to just go gung ho. And even at 3-0 against Anderlecht, you can forgive the boys for trying all their flicks and tricks on the edge of the box and committing going forward. But the moment one goes in, you've got someone's got to have a word and say, look, lads. 3-1, see the game out, do the job, slow down the tempo, do whatever you got to do. Two banks of 4 and press from the front and just play deep. Get someone on the counter. It's frustrating, and you can see it unraveling before your eyes, and it's going to happen again. Danny, do you have any thoughts on maybe our sort of defensive collapse just for this particular game, or any thoughts on the transfers?
Yeah, I do. I think in hindsight, we're all brilliant hindsight managers. And looking back at it, Wenger should have gone, well, look, we've let in a goal. Well, they showed in the first game that against us, they seem to be playing pretty well. They're probably the best team playing in Belgium. And it probably wasn't the greatest idea to bring on Podolski. I can see the sense of bringing on Rosicky because he can shore it up. He's got the experience, and he's got the skill, and he's got the calmness that we needed in midfield. But personally, I think he should have brought on Bellerin, played Bellerin at right back, move Chambers across to either a covering central defensive midfield or a defensive midfielder role. But I think it's time that maybe Nacho has shown that although he's not a bad centre back, he's only played a handful of games there now. That I think personally against Swansea, I would give Bellerin a go at right back and play Chambers at centre back just to mix things up again, because it doesn't seem like he's got many options that he's willing to try. I mean, personally, I would never want to see Nacho play at centre back again. Partly I think he feels uncomfortable, but Mertesacker seems to rely on someone with a little bit of pace who's also going to get stuck in, which I don't think Nacho really feels comfortable doing.
I'm more concerned about Per than I am Nomreal. I've got to be honest with you.
People, yeah, did you see on Talk Sport they were saying, was it BFG, big fucking German, or was it big useless German? And I think 76% of people said big useless German. I think he's getting a lot of grief, but he just needs someone more mobile, someone more willing to get forward and get stuck in next to him, because that's not his job, is it?
I know, but it's basic centre half play, right? The first thing you're taught if you're a forward, right, you've got to try and get across the defender towards the near post. If you're a defender, you've got to stop that centre forward getting across you to the near post. And it's been caught twice now. In 2 games, he's given 2 terrible goals away, where a centre forward just come across him and nodded it into the corner. I mean, it's basic play. He should know. He does read the game very well, but sometimes he gets caught on his heels, and it's costing. And when you're playing centre half, generally you'll get punished, especially in Champions League, and that's what happened.
Well, we saw from not last season, but the season before that, Szczesny was making lots of mistakes because he had no one pushing him. Then last season, he had the bloke from Palermo pushing him all the time for the place. And I think last season was one of Szczesny's better. But Mertesacker knows, maybe even psychologically, and he's not really thinking about it, but he knows his place is safe. He doesn't have to be on the ball 100% of the time, because maybe even subliminally he's just thinking, it doesn't matter what I do, I'm the only fit central defender. And even when Koscielny's back, there's still only 2 at the club, so maybe psychologically that's what's affecting his game, because to have it's taken him, when he first joined, he wasn't that wouldn't say he was rubbish in the team, but he didn't seem that comfortable. But now him and Koscielny have got such a great partnership together, but maybe he doesn't realise that his game is slowly slipping, because this season, if we had any other centre-backs at the club, he would not be starting the games.
And this is the reason. Sorry, FK, let me just cut in. And this is the reason why I think Arsene Wenger hasn't bought a third choice, as you call it, centre half. He doesn't want a third choice centre half. He wants to buy a first choice centre half, and they're very difficult to find. Man United have tried to find one. They've all tried to find one all across the world, right? But Wenger, he doesn't want that third choice. He can get Per to be the third choice centre half. He's coming to the end of his career now. He's had a fantastic career, but I think Arsenal will go in. He'll pay good money for a proper centre half, and who's going to come in and do that job. And Per, I should imagine, will be quite happy to come in for his 10, 15 games a season.
That's a fair point, Geoff. I mean, to be honest with you, my thoughts on Mertesacker is that actually the main man that he's missing is Koscielny. As individuals, they're both prone to mistakes and they can make errors, but as a pairing, they're brilliant. And actually, Koscielny mops up really well after Mertesacker, and Mertesacker mops up, likewise with Kos. So, any news on Koscielny when he might be coming back, Geoff? I know you're well contacted at the club.
No, I haven't inquired, to be honest with you, for a week or so. But apparently, he's ahead of his time.
Good.
So I don't know. They reckon end of November. So hopefully, maybe 10 days, 12 days, he might be a little bit in front.
Well, let's hope so, because Arsene Wenger on the Arsenal website today that said that Giroud's back quicker than expected. He's back in training next week, and Koscielny might have a tiny outside chance of making Man United, but I'd rather get him completely fully fit than rush him in. Okay, well, I mean that's kind of like dissected the Anderlecht game. I think from my sort of final thoughts for what it's worth. I don't think it changes much. I think we were always going to qualify. And I think actually having lost to Dortmund on the opening day of the group games, if I'm being honest, I thought we were always going to qualify second. And I think inevitably we'll probably go out at some stage deep in the knockout rounds if we're lucky. I'm just really glad it wasn't a league game. And speaking of which, we've got Swansea away on Sunday. Not probably looking at too many changes in the starting lineup. Just out of curiosity, actually, guys, because we've played Sanchez quite a lot, and Welbeck seems to be being played into the ground as well. I mean, what would your front three be? Your wide forwards and your centre forward. I'm just really interested. Danny, who would you play against Swansea?
I thought you were going to say for the general rest of the season. Just before you say that, Sanchez this season, 17 games, 11 goals, 3 assists. Wow, I never thought I'd see a player come in and fit in right off the right straight away like that. It's hard to know who we have got. I'm just looking at physio.
Would you play Theo?
I would have, if everybody was fit, it would be Giroud up front, but it's going to have to be Welbeck up front. Then I'd have Theo on the right, and I'd have Sanchez on the left. And then behind him, it's going to have to be maybe play the Ox in the centre of midfield, because his old man says that's his place where he wants to play. And I think with all of our wingers back in their positions, we will see more of the Ox in central midfield.
Geoff, do you see any changes being rung by Arsene for Sunday?
I don't think so. I think it more or less the same team. But I do think Theo will get maybe 30 minutes. You've got to take your time on him. You can't just bring him back willy nilly. I know,
after an injury like that.
No, you take your time. He looked sharp when he come on though was it Burnley? He come on against Burnley, didn't he?
Yeah.
Yeah, he looked sharp when he come on. He's bulked up. He's apparently done a lot of work on his quads. So
when he went in for that, when at their left-hand side of the pitch, right near the corner, he just shoulder barged someone out of the way. I thought, oh, here he is, our Theo's back.
Well, that's the problem. It's like you're holding on a leash because he wants to play, But at the same time, you've got to hold him back because you just never know. Just let him take his time and get into it. But I think he'll get 30 minutes. But I think we'll be all right against Swansea.
Did I say Anderlecht's corner? I meant Burnley's corner. He didn't play against Anderlecht. I do know that. I'm just losing it.
And right, just finishing off about Theo Walcott, he's obviously been brought into the England squad today, that announced by Roy Hodgson.
How do
you feel about that? I mean, him going to international with just 10 minutes to play.
No, keep him out of England. He's got to get back to full fitness. I mean, Geoff's spot on. He won't get a full game on Sunday, but Geoff's right. I think he should get 15, 20, 30 minutes or something. But playing for England and no, against the Scots as well. No, I don't think so. He'll get injured again, won't he? Everyone else gets injured for England, so it's our turn next.
Funny enough, I agree with what he's doing because it will help him get fitter. I think he might get a little bit of game time for England, and once he's there with the lads, I think he'll train him properly, and I think it'll help. It'll aid his recovery.
Are you sure? Does Roy Hodgson really listen to our managers and is he only going to play him 15, 20 minutes?
He does the opposite.
Just hope he doesn't start.
He does the opposite, and a lot of them are getting injured in training, so that their training methods are probably worse than ours, which is a big thing to say. God, blimey.
Well, let's keep our fingers crossed. And just to summarise this section, Danny, I'll go to you first. What are your thoughts on the Swansea game in terms of a prediction?
I think it's going to be a tough game because it always is going there. I mean, I remember when they first come up, we thought, we'd nip down to Wales, we'd give them a beating, and we'd come back. But that's not going to happen. I think if we get a draw, that'd be perfectly acceptable, especially the way we're playing with their team. I think, is it Harry Monk is their manager? Or no, Gary Monk. That's it. I think he's doing a decent job down there, and he's told them no diving around, no flying around like little girls. So it's going to be a tough game. I think we're going to maybe get a 1-1 down there. I could maybe even see them sneaking a win because they're a decent team.
What?
Jesus.
I know, Swansea. You got to watch out for Swansea.
First goal scorer?
Got to be Sanchez, hasn't it? You can't not say Sanchez. He's scoring more often than anyone.
Geoff, over to you, mate.
I think it'll be difficult. I think it'll be a bit harum scarum, but I think we'll come through it. We'll win 2. We need to go in front. That's the key.
You're not going to say 2-0 Giroud, are you?
No, certainly not. I'm going to go back to the old default and say 2-1 Alexis Sanchez.
You do know Swansea are 6th and they're only 2 points behind us. They're no mugs.
Yeah, they won't be after the weekend, though.
The easy tiger.
And Raj, what do you think?
I'm going to go with Danny. I think it's going to be a very exciting 2-2 draw. And yeah, Sanchez. You can't bet against Sanchez. So Sanchez is my main man.
Very interesting. Well, Swansea are without John Joe Shelby because he was sent off in their last game, and they actually boast the second tightest defensive record in the Premier League, joint with Chelsea, behind Southampton of all teams. So I'm going to go for a 2-1 sneaky away win, and I think Welbeck will get the first one just to be different to Geoff. And next we'll go to the shout-outs. So again, we'll go back to you, Geoff, actually. Who's your shout-out for this week?
My shout-out for this week is a guy called Dan from Operation Arsenal. I think we was there at the weekend FK when they had all the artwork and stuff at the Pinebury Corner.
Did you dig deep at all, Geoff?
Of course, mate.
I've dug deep myself, and Dan from Owls Not Nuts, I've bought a little piece off of him.
It's fantastic.
Yeah,
and I don't know whether you've seen the stuff on the projector that they put
up against buildings.
It was fantastic.
Oh.
It was they ambushed the place and done it in the darkness. So his Twitter is a funny one. I think you've had trouble with this before, haven't you, Danny? So it's at Owls Not Nuts, ALSNOTNUTZ.
And I have told him about that, and he did. I said to you, need to change it. I bought the piece that he had that was a limited edition of a bit of artwork where it's looking from the top of Highbury Hill, looking down towards the East Stand entrance where I used to go in. A framed piece like that's the bit I've bought.
Nice.
It's a stunning bit. They've only made 50 of them, and I think mine's number 12. I wanted number 10, but
are they numbered as well?
Yeah, they are. Only doing 50 prints.
That's brilliant. And so who's your shout-out this week, Danny?
Jason Davies. He's at the last moment it jumped on. He's listening there now, and he's gone out of his way to come and record this because we were having an absolute nightmare at the beginning of the show. Gimli's laptop wasn't working, then his Skype wasn't working, then my Skype recorder wasn't working. So Jason has jumped on and he's stayed there for the entire show, and he's recording it all. And also our very own poor little Gimli. He needs a little shout-out and a tickle under the chin because he's not a happy boy. He very nearly had that laptop of his surgically removed from some part of someone else's body because he was that angry with it. Okay. So he's probably sitting on a mushroom now getting stoned. So
well, we ought to check and make sure he's alive.
Yes.
Raj, I know you've got a shout out, but you've also got a special announcement, so over to you.
Yeah, the shout out is to a lady called AFC Ali 71. Her tag is at Tweetily Blonde. And she taught me the etiquette of how to kiss a woman on the cheek, whether it's one or two cheeks, and I don't know. I'm still confused. We didn't work it out, and I've got me social anxieties have gone a bit awry tonight. And the announcement is that our next guest, we've got a special guest coming up in a few weeks' time, and it's not an Arsenal player, but it is a very interesting person. It's former Watford and AC Milan player Luther Blissett.
Wow,
so that should be quite good. He was one of the first black players in this country, and he's got some stories to tell about AC Milan and
14 games for England.
Yeah. So it'll be fun, and we'll get him on and ask a few questions and get some of our listeners to ask him a few questions as well.
Great, Koo. Well, thanks for that. My shout out, for what it's worth, would actually be to one of our very own, or one of our special people that used to be on the panel, Gav. Actually,
bless
and the reason why.
Let's get back on. Get him back on.
You know what? He has got the skills to pay the bills. He should be Lord Sugar's next apprentice because he is going all out on all sorts of gadgets and goodies. And I've got to be honest with you, every time I see him, he sorts me out, and his stuff is great. I got an amazing Oyster wallet the other day from him, and my clock cufflinks are superb as well. So Gav, actually, and he's obviously very opinionated. If you don't know who I'm talking about, so get following. Well, that wraps up part one of the show this week. Coming up next is ex-Arsenal player Perry Groves. Perry played for Arsenal between 86 and 92 and actually made over 200 appearances for us. Perry, great to have you on the show.
Good evening. I'm not still sure about the legend. I don't think I was good enough. If you say cult with a L, then I'll go for that. But legend, I don't think so.
How are you, mate?
I'm good.
Good man. Great to have you on the show. We'll go straight stuck in. Anderlecht this week, a lot's been made of our performance, 3-0 up, and then to concede 3 goals and actually end up drawing 3-3. What are your thoughts on the game, and and why do you think we let the lead slip?
I think when you're 3-0 up, then your priorities change, and it's actually seeing the game out. And I don't think our team is very good at game management. And And obviously, people would look at Arsene Wenger, what instructions he's giving the players. But I actually think the players should take responsibility. And when you're on the pitch, you've got Per Mertesacker at centre-half, who's played over 100 times for Germany, World Cup winner. You've got Flamini in front of him, so it should be your senior players saying to Callum Chambers and Kieran Gibbs, don't go bombing on, just sit beside us. To Flamini and Aaron Ramsey, you sit in front of the back four, and then we'll just see the game out. So we've got too many players who want to go and score the fourth goal, which you don't need to. So it's a bit of a stark sort of learning curve, but if you want to progress and win trophies, you've got to know how to see games out, and you have different priorities as the games go on. You can't always want to go and score a goal.
But just on that, Perry, obviously we've seen Arsenal let Leeds slip time and time again. Not as drastically as 3 goals, but where is that instruction supposed to come from? I mean, is it just the players should take responsibility? I'm one of Arsene Wenger's biggest fans, but is it Arsene's responsibility? I mean, why does it keep happening?
I just think there's a philosophy at Arsenal where when we've got the ball, and every time we have the ball, we have to go and try and score. Where that's all very well, when you're 0-0 and 1-0, but then when the game situations change, you have to adapt your philosophy differently. So if you're 1 or 2-0 up, then you have to keep the ball and make sure you starve the opposition of possession. So obviously it should come a bit of direction from the touchline, but as I reiterate again, players have to take responsibility. There's no way, and if Anderlecht were a European superpower, if it was Real Madrid who come back from 3-0 down, or if it's Bayern Munich, you could sort of understand it because the quality players have. But you can't be losing 3-goal leads against Anderlecht. And it was tactical naivety, I think, mainly from the players.
Okay, and before we just go on to questions from listeners, obviously a lot's been made about Arsene Wenger in the aftermath of this result. The press obviously, treat him like a piece of meat. As soon as there's a bad result, they pounce on him. What are your views as an someone close to the club, an ex-pro? What are your thoughts, your stance on the manager? Is he the right man for the job? Are you looking forward to him leaving and being replaced?
Well, I've said that Arsene probably won't be appreciated how he should be until he's not manager anymore. Whether he stays for another 2 or 3 years, then people look back and they'll say what an innovative manager he was. People forget he didn't just change the culture of Arsenal Football Club when he came in 1996. He changed the culture of English football in general. So he's up there with Herbert Chapman, who changed the culture of Arsenal in the 30s, and he changed the culture of English football. So I think you've got to be very careful what you wish for. He's seen the transition from Highbury to the Emirates. He's had to lose his best player season after season after season so we could fund the stadium. Now the stadium is all but paid for. We're a very cash-rich club at the moment. Now he should be given the opportunity to go and spend that money. And he spent it wisely with Alexis Sanchez and Callum Chambers. Now he needs to go and buy a centre-half and a dominant physical midfield player, about 6'1", 6'2", whose only job is thinking about defending. So he deserves the right to be able to spend that money.
Right, jolly good. Right, we're going to have Geoff and Raj. Did you have some questions you want to ask people before we go on to listeners' questions?
Yeah, Perry, you won't remember me because you meet millions of people every day, but we met at a benefit gig at the Rocket a few years ago. I was one of the organisers of the Rocky Remembered gig.
So you're saying you want the entrance fee?
Yeah,
I know your ticket money.
You owe me a tenner, so if you can stick that. But no, I mean, it was an emotional night for all fans, including yourself. You went on stage and you said some great things about Rocky. He was a good mate of yours, and just let us know. Can you tell us now, your relationship with him in those days, and how much of a friend he was, and how much of an impact he had in the team?
Well, I've gone all tingly by just you mentioning him, and he was a player that I was privileged to play in the same team as. But I was more honoured to have him as a teammate and a friend. And I don't know anybody who would say a bad word. When people pass away, a lot of people wax lyrical about how great they were. They're a little bit sycophantic. You couldn't speak too highly of Rocky. And when I first went to the club in September '86, I went and trained with the first team on a Friday, and we were playing Spurs on the Saturday. And I wasn't going to be anywhere near the first team for about a year. George had already made that pretty clear, that I was a lot of rough edges and I'd be in the reserves before I got in. But he said, go and train with the first team. And obviously I'd seen Rocky play. England under 21 international, was just breaking into the England full squad. Like I remember watching him and watching how well balanced he was. He was one of the few players who could do the foot over. When people forget that, he had a brilliant foot over. But it's very rare that you get a flair player, which he was, with the skill that he had. And people forget what a fantastic tackler and winner of the ball back that he was. And we were taking corners together. We did, because believe it or not, we used to do a lot of set pieces under George Graham. We used to practice quite a bit. And I wanted to be his mate. Every time he took, oh, great ball, Rocky, oh, brilliant ball, God, what a ball that is. And even if he scuffed it on the floor. And in the end, he turned to me and he went, look, Perry, he said, I know you knew. He said, but you can stop saying what a great ball now, because that was crap. He said, so I think we're mates. You don't have to keep telling me how great I am. And he was like, the big grin that he had on his face. Too good looking by half. Always stand away from him in the team photos because he made me look even uglier than what I really was. But just a fantastic player, fantastic human being. Loved Arsenal. You know when they say that players have Arsenal in their heart. And when he left Arsenal, he obviously went to Leeds, Chelsea. He was never the same player for those clubs because he didn't have it in his heart. He played well for them, but it was never the same. He wasn't the same Rocky that I knew putting that Arsenal shirt on.
One of the things that a lot of younger fans say to me sometimes when I talk about David Rocastle is that they don't understand why people my age, late 40s, maybe older, who still revere him as a player at the Arsenal. And I tell him that for a lot of us, he lived our dreams for playing at Highbury and playing for the Arsenal. Is that something that would still hang on now? I mean, would you kind of understand why we think that?
Yeah, well, the thing is, we all lived your dreams. We all. I was a massive gooner. My dad's family are gooners. Uncle Vic played, so we were living the dream, and we were the best players in our school team, who become the best players in the district team, and then counting. And you work your way through, and then you play for a magnificent club like Arsenal Football Club is, and then you're just proud and privileged every day. And what we hoped was that. We may not have been as easy on the eye of some Arsenal teams, but I don't think any fans that era could ever doubt the passion and commitment that went into playing. And I think Rocky epitomised that. Like I said before, he wasn't just all about passion and pride. He had subliminal skills. And if anybody wants to see one of the greatest goals ever for Arsenal, watch Arsenal against Manchester United when he chipped Peter Schmeichel. But it's the two players that he went in between. He went in between Brian Robson and Paul Ince, left them for dead. And he chipped probably the greatest goalkeeper that we've had in the last 30 years from 30 yards. So he wins the ball back, goes past two brilliant players, and then chips the greatest goalkeeper, along with David Seaman that we've seen in 30 years. So that one little bit of action, I think, sums Rocky up to a T.
Perry.
Hello.
Yeah. Let me ask you about the. Obviously, you was part of the '89 team at Liverpool. Uh-huh. When we went 1-0 up, and then all of a sudden, Mickey Thomas has gone running through the middle of the pitch. Now you was on the pitch at the time. Can you remember what you was thinking?
I'm bloody glad that's not me, because if I'd have run through, I'd have smacked against a crossbar and we'd only won 1-0. So people forget that I took the whole back four away. I made the run to the left-hand side.
Very true.
They knew where the danger was. And, but when Tomo ran through, it's great in sporting moments, and other great sportsmen tell me that it's like it goes in slow motion. And I can remember watching him get the little ricochet, and then he had 30, 40 yards to run, getting into the box, and in my head, and I actually physically shouted, shoot, you're going to get tackled. You're going to take the ball off you.
Yeah.
And he waited and waited and waited. And again, I'm biased, but I think that's the greatest goal ever in the history of Arsenal, modern history, because of what it meant to the club and the fans to win the title last game of the season. And people forget that he missed a sitter about 15 minutes before that.
Before it, yeah.
So for him to put himself in that position showed a massive heart and mental strength. Because if he'd have missed it, it'd have been every Arsenal fan, he would have been remembered as the player that missed the chance. So that, I think, epitomised our team, where it was all about heart and desire and spirit. And other people forget as well, we used to get a lot of stick for being quite a direct team. with little flair or finesse.
Yeah.
That started from John Lukic, thrown out to Lee Dixon, into Alan Smith, laid it off to Michael Thomas and through. So that team was a good footballing team as well. But I can just remember looking across and thinking he was going to get tackled, and then just to wait until Bruce Grobbler committed himself and flick it over him. The one regret I have, I wasn't very well media trained. I ran to the wrong part of the goal. I ran to the Arsenal fans over in the right-hand corner, and I should have gone where Mickey Thomas and Martin Hayes were and got in more photos.
Harry, just you talking us through that from Lukic to Dixon to Smith to Thomas brings back such amazing memories. Presumably that was one of the greatest nights of your life. I've got to ask you, given the social aspect of the game back then, how many days were you guys drinking for after that night? And could you maybe tell us about, and certainly the listeners that aren't maybe aware of it, but about the Notorious Tuesday Club, which was obviously headed up by yourself and Tony Adams and Paul Merson. Tell us about that side of the game.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't days, it was weeks. We had, I think we had nearly 8 or 9 weeks off pre-season. And there's a thing that goes around that people say, don't get too carried away with the highs, but don't get too low and too down with the lows. That's the biggest load of rubbish ever. When you have a high, you milk it for everything it's worth because there's enough of the low times. And we get weighed before the end of the season. You have your optimum playing weight, and you're allowed to come back 4 pounds over your playing weight when you report for pre-season training. So I was 12 stone 4. I was allowed to come back 12 stone 8. Anything over that, you get fined £100 a pound, which goes to charity. The average weight gain for our team was £10 through that summer because all of the lads were on it all summer. And I actually think quite rightly so, because there's very few times, and I don't think fans care. If you're winning games and you're winning trophies, fans don't care if you go out and have a few drinks and enjoy yourself. It's all about winning.
Of course not. Of course not.
You said about the Tuesday Club. That was probably infamous more than famous, I'd have thought. But that's only if I've got to put this on the record, that's only if we won on the Saturday. If we drew, we got beat, then we didn't go out because it wasn't fair. Fans see you out enjoying yourself as if you don't care. You earn the right to go out. Lucky enough, we won most of our games on the Saturday, so we was all right. We train at Highbury on a Tuesday. We finish by 12. Then there'll be Tony Adams, Paul Merson, Steve Bold, myself, Nigel Winterburn, Niall Quinn, all go to a local pub, have a few pints. And the good thing about it is fans come up and have a chat with you, and talk about the game that's gone on, the game that's coming up. Then we'd hit a wine bar, hit a lap dancing club somewhere about 5:30 in the morning, throw a few shapes, run a few poles, and end up falling asleep on a park bench. So, and then the married lads would make their way home, and the single lads would probably go out again on the Wednesday. So, there's a serious part to it as well, though, because at any one time in a bar, it could be anywhere in London. Sometimes Potter's Bar, we didn't know where, we couldn't even remember where we were. You'd have 16 to 18 of the first team squad all enjoying each other's company. Now, Rocky, Paul Davis, Gus Sees and Michael Thomas, they might go to a soul club somewhere. Dave Seaman would pretend that he was night fishing, then come out and have a few drinks with us and then go back to his night fishing. But team spirit, you get team spirit on the training ground and on the pitch, but team spirit is like bonding as well, and we had some real good times on those. And George Graham knew where we were. He had spies out everywhere. So when we went on training on the Thursday, we'd do a high-intensity training session, and then at the end of it, it would go Merson, Groves, Bold, Winterburn, Adams, Quinn, you lot stay behind. You're doing some extra running. And we go, well, what are you punishing us for? And he'd say, I knew where you were Tuesday. So it'd make us sweat it out of our system. But it wasn't just a drinking jolly boys. We took our football very seriously. And if we won and we trained hard, then we played hard.
And what's your relationship with those players like now, Perry? I mean, obviously, it's not the same. But how often do you see them? And do you talk about the good old days? And do you go to each other's houses and have like barbecues and whatnot?
No.
What happens?
Well, you know what happens. It's normally wives and girlfriends who keep in contact with each other, and I'd say 80% of us are divorced, so that doesn't happen. Their wives and girlfriends don't keep in contact. Blokes are lazy. You go, yeah, let's go out. But when we all see each other, it's like a band of brothers. We have a common bond. Yeah. And there was nobody. in a lot of clubs, there's cliques and players don't like players and there's fights. In the 6 years that I was there, I can probably remember one, what I'd say, fight in training, which is very unusual, for like athletes who are testosterone flying around. Probably helps if you're winning because everybody's happy. But we all got on. And when we see each other, I go out with Merce quite a lot. There's a comment. Every time I'm out with him, he gets in trouble. Every time he's out with me, I get in trouble. So even though we're this age, when we see each other, I see Nigel Winterburn a lot, Quinny, Alan Smith, the boys on the media circuit. So when you bump into each other, it's just like old times. But blokes are lazy. You say you're going to keep in touch and arrange to do things. You don't do it really.
Perry, you spent 5 seasons with Colchester United in the old 4th Division, and then beginning of 86-87 you played 1 game for Colchester, and then George Graham signed you in the September. Did you believe when you signed for Arsenal that season you would go on to play 34 games and score 3 goals in all competitions, or did you think you'd just be going there to make up the numbers?
Good research, by the way. Is that yourself, or you got a little?
I've got my own website. I've done a biography on you about 2.5 years ago.
Thing is, I couldn't remember that myself. No, it's a weird thing because when I thought I was going to Crystal Palace because they'd been watching myself and a player called Tony Adcock quite a bit, and I got a call. I got tapped up by Alan Evans, who was the coach. Steve Copper was the manager, and he phoned me up and he said, Perry, we've been watching you play. We like your energy, your pace and your desire. We're going to play you up front. This is Crystal Palace. We're going to bid for you. And we found this player from non-league who we think is a rough diamond. His name's Ian Wright. God knows what happened. I don't know what happened to him. I don't know what he did. But they were going to play me and Wrighty up front for Crystal Palace. So when I went to Arsenal on the Thursday, which I think was September the 4th, if I'm not wrong, I thought I was still going to Crystal Palace, and my financial advisor was winding me up, playing tricks, saying I was going to Arsenal. And then I thought, we got to Arsenal tube station, and I thought, what we're doing, we're meeting in North London, because no one would expect Crystal Palace to be meeting a player in the north of London. And when we went up Avenel Road, and we went to the Marble Halls and the entrance there, and Nobby, the old commissionaire, in all his regalia, was on the door, and he said, "Morning, Mr. Groves," and that's when it hit home. I thought, it looks like they want me, and it was like whoa moment. And George, the gaffer, went and saw him in his office. He was in the biggest Wizard of Oz chair I've ever seen in my life. And he put a little milking stool, so he had obviously the upper hand. And he just said, "I've watched you play. I'm going to bring the desire and the pride back to Arsenal Football Club. You're the sort of player that we want, who's hungry. You're too rough at the moment. We're going to smooth the edges off. You won't be in the first team for probably about a year. We'll put you in the reserves, learn your trade, the way that we play." So I thought I was going to be a reserve team player, and work my way into the side. And then Graham Ricks got injured. After about a month I was there, and he was playing a left wing, and George Graham pulled me in, and he said, "You've been playing one in the reserves. I'm thinking about playing you on the left wing. Have you ever played there before?" I went, "Yeah, of course I've played half a season for Arsenal, for Colchester on left wing. Never played there in my life. No, couldn't even kick with my left foot." It was like, but I'm not going to say no, I've never, because I want to play. And he said, "You're playing, making your full debut against Nottingham Forest, up against, I think it was Franz Carr one side, and the right back might have been Steve Chettle, I'm not sure." So then I make debut. And it's a weird thing. The summer of 1986, I was playing for Colchester, played my last game against Exeter at home, watched Kenny Sansom play in the World Cup, obviously one of the greatest England fullbacks, playing against Maradona. And at the end of that season, I'm walking out of Wembley with Kenny Sansom, my captain, playing in front 92,000 against Liverpool, which is, if you'd have said at the beginning of that year, that's what happened, you wouldn't have got any money on it. So it was quite a big transformation.
You said that your first start was against Nottingham Forest, and against Nottingham Forest, we lost 1-0. Your first ever game for Arsenal, you come on as a sub for Noel Quinn away at Luton Town.
Yes.
In the middle of September. What do you remember about that game? Because the lineup, if people are listening, was Lukic, Anderson, Sanson, O'Leary, and Adams at the back, Steve Williams, Graham Ricks, Paul Davis, Rocastle, Charlie Nicholas, and Noel Quinn up front. Do you remember anything about that match? Because we have Dave Hillier, we've had him on quite a few times, and every time I ask him anything about this, he says, "No, I don't remember."
I remember Steve Foster, the Luton centre half, with the
headband,
shaggy permanent headband.
And you didn't want to mess with him.
Well, me being like a Springer Spaniel, obviously making my debut, coming on, and I remember making a run to run across him because he couldn't run. He was like slower than my granddad. So I went to run across him, and he just tripped me up off the ball, and I went flying, and I burnt my 2 knees on the plastic pitch. So all the skin, I think my skin's still at Kenilworth Road at the moment. So so I had 2 massive holes in my knees, and he just patted me on the head and he went, "You're with the big boys now, son. Calm yourself down." He said, every time you try and run across me, I'm just going to trip you up. And it took a good year and a half for those scabs on my knees to heal. So that's what I remember of the ridiculous plastic pitch that was at Luton. And all players wanted to do back then is just get that game over and done with. If I'm not wrong, I think we drew the game. I'm not sure.
0-0.
0-0. And you just want to get off the pitch without being injured, because in those days it was like playing on concrete. The Luton pitch, QPR's pitch, Oldham Athletic had a plastic pitch as well. And it was just, get you there, get your job done and get out. And I couldn't believe I was on 350 quid a week as a basic wage, and a win bonus was 350 quid, and you get half of it only if you get half for the draw. You get 175 quid, but you only get it if you get on the pitch. So I couldn't believe that I got 175 quid just for running around for 10 minutes, which was happy days. Do
you remember your first ever goal? I'm just looking here. It was 3-1 at Watford, the day after my 16th birthday.
Okay.
And you scored first, then Martin Hayes with a penalty, Noel Quinn with one. What do you remember about your first goal? How did you take it?
Unusually for me, it was with my left foot, and there was a throw-in on the right-hand side, and I took a touch, and it was actually a bad touch. Unusual for me, to be fair, but it was a bad touch. And it ran across my body, and I remember thinking, I'll try and bend this in the top corner with my left foot, and I actually did it. So, like Dennis Bergkamp could do it 4 or 5 times a game, and I scored. And the Arsenal fans must have been thinking, "Yeah, we got a player here." It's the only time I ever did it, so you always got to leave a lasting impression. Then I got brought down for a penalty. We won 3-1. I think Tony Coton was in goal, and he brought me down for a penalty, and he got stretchered off, I think. We ended up winning the game 3-1. So that was my full home debut. So scoring in front of North Bank, being a Gooner on your full home debut.
Wow.
It's pretty good, really.
Oh, that's all my questions done.
Do you know, going back to the 87 Cup run in the League Cup, I mean that must have been incredible for you. I think it was your first season, wasn't it? Was it your first season? Yeah, first season. You all of a sudden you're in a semi. Was it Everton the semi-final?
No, that was the next year.
That was the next year, wasn't it?
Yeah,
of course it was. Of course, in Allenton, wasn't it?
Yes, yeah.
That's right. That was a fantastic night.
I was the difference because it was 2-legged.
That's right.
We played them at home, and we lost 1-0, and then I got injured. I did my ankle ligaments, and then we played him obviously twice at White Hart Lane, and we beat him 2-1 in both games. So leaving me out that's why we got through to the cup final.
Yeah, I like it. We got to the cup final, and it was a tight old game. I remember it with Liverpool. I was there that day, and I don't think we played that well. But
I think we did.
It's difficult being a fan at Wembley, isn't it? I suppose you
don't enjoy the game until you've won it.
No, you don't. Especially against Liverpool. There was a good side at the time, wasn't I? But I do remember one thing that I'll never forget, when you put Gary Gillespie on his arse when you crossed it for Charlie Nick.
Yeah, I think he's still sliding now. I think
I'll tell you,
a cup of coffee and a burger.
All the listeners, go back and have a look at that on YouTube, because it was a fantastic bit of skill, wasn't it, mate?
It's weird because beginning the season I'm playing for Colchester in front of 1,300. That was April the 4th or 6th. I think it was April the 6th. And walking out 92,000 at Wembley. It was the first season that there was 2 substitutes used. It was an experiment in the Little Cup. So it was myself and Michael Thomas. And I remember Ian Rush scoring, and he had a record that whenever he scored, Liverpool never lost.
That's right.
And I think it was about 170 games he played, 170 goals. So then Charlie equalised, and then last, I think it was like probably 18, 20 minutes, they were getting tired, and George Graham was red hot that day. It was probably about 85, 90 degrees. And the gaffer said, Grovesy, go on. He said, I want you to put their back four under pressure, try and get behind them, get in the channels, work them. And then remember Kenny clearing the ball down the left touch line and getting on the ball. And you sometimes, as a player, you get a feeling. And I didn't see Gary Gillespie, but I could feel that he was coming towards me. And I knew that he was going to slide, so I just flicked it over him. And then,
Brilliant.
Then sort of cut in. And because it was on the left-hand side, I thought, I ain't shooting my left foot. I've got to pass it. So that's why I passed it. If I was on the right-hand side, I would have shot.
Yeah. Because
I was on my weakest foot, then obviously squared it to Charlie. And again, it took a massive deflection.
He scuffed it a bit, didn't he? Yeah.
Exactly. That's another time where it was slow motion because the ball seemed to take an age to get to the back of the net.
It did. Was really slow, wasn't it?
Exactly. And then when it obviously hits the back of the net, and we win, to be part of a team, and because the League Cup was a big cup competition then because we weren't in Europe. Every club was banned, so you could only win the league, the FA Cup, or the League Cup. And in a major final in front of 92,000 against Liverpool, who were the best team in the country. And to win our first time, we hadn't won a trophy since 1979. To win the first trophy for 8 years and be part of that. If my Arsenal career would have finished then, that would have been enough. That would have been, do you know what I mean? Being a Gooner.
Amazing.
Being part of that, yeah, exactly. So, the celebrations. I think we got beat 3-1 at West Ham on the Tuesday in the next league game, and there were a few sore heads. I don't think our physical levels were quite as what they should have been. Really.
I love it. And the next year, you nearly done it again. Semi-final. That was a semi-final against Everton, wasn't it?
Again, there's another drinking story there. We went away to Marbella for a team bonding before the semi-final at Goodison Park. And again, Everton were probably the second best team in the country at the time. They'd won a few titles. And so I went to Marbella for warm weather training. So there was about 4 or 5 days. Come back on the Friday, went on the Monday, come back on the Friday, played the reserves in a practice match on the Saturday before we were travelling up to Everton, and we got beat 4-0. The reserves absolutely battered us because, again, we were a little bit, worse where energy levels weren't great. And we all sat on the coach going up there and thought, if we play like that, we're going to get battered here. And then it's just amazing, night's rest, end up playing and then scoring the winning goal past Neville Southall, left foot volley.
Fantastic goal, by the way.
Yeah, and it's just...
Dodgy first touch, was it or not?
Actually, no, that one was all right. That was off my thigh, so that one was okay. But it counted as 2 goals because it was Neville Southall, because he was the best goalkeeper in the world at the time. When you score against Hans Seegers, he didn't count at all because it was like having a bus driver in goal. But then obviously winning the game, 1-0, getting them back to Highbury, beating them 3-1 at home, Hazy missing the penalty, Highbury rocking with about 55,000 in there, and then obviously getting to the final again. And then I don't want to talk about it anymore because that was probably the worst experience of my professional career against Luton we're talking about.
Yeah,
and it was Nigel's fault for missing the penalty.
Why did they let Nigel take the penalty when he had so many others on there?
No one else wanted to take it.
Because I was at that game. It's horrible.
Yeah, well...
How we never won that in 90 minutes, I will never, ever know.
We battered them. Even though we didn't play to our full potential, and if Nigel scores the penalty, we go 3-1 up, and it's it's done and dusted. So, but that's what I say. You should milk the highs because that was the lowest I've ever felt. I got the hook after about 55, 60 minutes, and as I remember going off, and as I went off, Alan Smith, as I walked past me, went Grovesy, limp, so people think you're injured. But when we went 2-1 up, I was sitting on the bench thinking, all right, I've had a bit of a nightmare. But people forget that. If we win, another trophy, who cares? Then you get beat 3-2, and then you're sat in the dressing room afterwards. You can't get drunk because you're so low. And then George, the gaffer, made one change from that cup final team to the team we played on the following Saturday against Sheffield Wednesday. He dropped one player from that game. Obviously,
Sorry, go on.
It was my fault again. I was the only one who got dropped.
Perry, in your time as a player, were there any players that you just didn't fancy going up against? You kind of woke up on a Saturday morning, looked at the opposition team, thought, sod that, I don't fancy playing against him. Because I met a Division 1 referee years ago, and he said that the player that always gave him a hard time was Brian Robson.
Oh, yeah, you should give him a whistle.
He was a very tough player to referee, but was he a tough player to play against?
He was a tough player to play against, but I agree with that referee, because Brian Robson was brilliant. He would play about 5 yards from the referee and tell him what he should be doing, what he shouldn't be doing. In the end, you say, well, just give him the flipping whistle, will you? But he was a brilliant player. He was box to box. But there was never a player who I didn't want to play against, because I was playing for Arsenal and we fancied we'd beat anybody. And you have a belief that you can go anywhere, anytime, and take the best on. So that's the belief that George Graham instilled in them. And I used to think that they should be more worried about me than what I am about them.
And were there any other players that you just didn't fancy playing against, or just gave you a hard time?
No,
what were the best players you played against?
Well, the best player was Paul McGrath, the old Aston Villa and Republic of Ireland centre-half. And at the time he had dodgy knees. And God knows how good he could have been if he didn't have 2 dodgy knees and a drink problem, because in the games that I played against him, he was incredible. He was unbelievably quick, strong, brave. You'd think you just got past him, and he'd stick out like an Inspector Gadget leg, where he'd extend his leg, slide tackle, you bring the ball away, and it'd embarrass you even more because he'd run away and then he'd pass it, and you'd have to crack him back. Whereas most centre-halves in those days, you used to just smack the ball in the stand and I've never understood that, get a round of applause for clearing the ball in the stand. But Paul McGrath was pretty special.
Right, shall I go to the listeners' questions now, everybody?
Yeah.
Lovely. Right. Peter N, 1947, who was born in 47, is one of the friends of the pod. He says, a while back, Perry put out a call on TalkSport tracking down his Uncle Vic, and I wondered if he ever managed to track him down.
Yeah, we got him. Yeah. It was part of the 100 Club. At Arsenal now, they've got an executive box where if you play over 100 league games for Arsenal, then you get invited to different games. So it's a bit of an exclusive club. You get a tie. And I was amazed and honoured that you have to be obviously retired from football. We have to be alive, obviously, which is a given. But I thought there'd be about 200, 250 players, who'd played over 100 league games. It's going back to the 40s and 50s. There's only 73 players who have retired and are alive who have played over 100 league games. And Vic was the 73rd one we couldn't find. So we put out an APB on TalkSport, and we got him. We found him. Came to one of the games, gave him his tie, and he's all well. So yeah, that was one of the advantages of doing national radio. So we found Vic.
Because he also says, I saw, because he's born in 47, he says, I also saw your uncle play many times. He scored a winner away in a cup replay with Bedford Town. And he says, maybe Perry could share a memory of him with us, and us oldies would love that.
Well, to be fair, you'd be probably better off talking to my dad, because my dad used to go and watch him play. Quite a lot in the mid-50s and early 60s. He was captain of Arsenal. So I've got the honour of being the second best player in our family, which is pretty cool, really. So I don't mind that at all. And we had very similar careers, because I think he finished his career with an Achilles injury, and people who watched us both play said we had exactly the same running style, where it's like running on tiptoes. So it's just, obviously, it was a hereditary thing. There's a funny story about the 100 Club as well. Anders Limpar, we got a call from Philip Miles, who's running the 100 Club, to say that Anders Limpar has played 98 league games. Do we think that he should be allowed in the 100 Club? Unreservedly, no. No way. It's not a 98 club, it's a 100 club.
Fair play.
Well, talking of Anders Limpar, someone in Sweden called Anders B, who is, I think he knows Anders Limpar, says, Did you ever get any praise from George Graham? Limpar said on a Swedish podcast that not once did he ever get even a good word from him.
Very rarely. Very, very rarely. It was always what you hadn't done rather than what you had done. And Anders and the Gaffer had a bit of a love-hate relation. The Gaffer loved Anders' ability. And if you look at the 1990-91 season, where we only lost one game, he was the reason that we were an excellent team, because he would do things when we were drawing in the last 20 minutes. He'd bend balls in the top corner, beat 5 or 6 players, score goal from the halfway line, score a goal from a corner against, up at Old Trafford against Manchester United. And he made us into an excellent team. The next season, the team was struggling a little bit, and Anders wasn't a worker. He wasn't someone who would chase lots of scores and track back. He was the flair player, and we couldn't afford to carry him. So that's when George was getting on his back. But that season, look at Anders, his goals. He was absolutely incredible.
You just mentioned that that season where they're unbeaten. Just a very quick one, because I know we've got to move it on. You played in the game at Stamford Bridge. I only lost that season. We lost 2-1 to Chelsea.
Yeah.
Why did we lose that game?
Steve Bolt's fault. Went off injured at half-time, and Dave Hillier had to go at centre-half.
Hillier's fault, I knew it.
No, yeah, exactly. Obviously not being a centre-half. He did all right, but... so we all blame Baldy. And I like to point out as well, people forget, we've got the Invincibles, right? Quite rightly, the greatest domestic team that there's ever been. But I think we've got the second greatest domestic team in English football, because we only lost one game. Man United haven't done that. Chelsea haven't done it. Man City haven't done it. So we've got the two teams with the best domestic records in English football.
And Spurs
only conceded 18 goals or something all season as well, wasn't it? Something really low.
Exactly, yeah. So the famous Arsenal back four, but they got protected. Trust me, everybody had to work in front of them. So it was a whole team sort of effort.
A lot of people on Twitter say, sorry, FK, a lot of people on Twitter say that was the best ever Arsenal team.
Well, the 1991.
Yeah. A lot of people argue with me because they said it was the best team, because I know they lost one game, but better than the Invincibles team.
It's difficult to compare different eras, but I'll tell you something. Us against the Invincibles would have been one hell of a battle. They'd probably ended up 7v7 because no one would have given an inch. Because the Invincibles, they could play, but they could battle and fight as well. And we were very much the same. We could scrap it out, or we could play decent football. So it would be very interesting to see how it panned out, because they would know they'd been in a game against that team from 1991.
That is fantastic, Perry. And also your funny story about Anders Limpar makes me now realise why I was sat next to him against Barcelona in the North Bank Lower, the 98 block, maybe. Just moving on, Perry, obviously it's as wonderful as it is to hear about the past and yourself and your career. I just want to finish off this segment now by your thoughts on our season. Now, when the season first started, obviously Arsenal fans had a lot of hope for maybe a title-challenging season with our unquestionable wealth, and we've got the nucleus in place, great stadium, good players. Now we're 10 games in, we look like we're going to qualify as runners-up in the Champions League, and we look like we're creeping into the top four. What are your expectations for the season? And looking forward to January, the transfer window, would you expect Arsenal to move for anyone, and what would you like to see brought in?
Expectations are, I expect us to be in the top four, and it all depends how many points you are behind the leaders, and it looks like it's going to be Chelsea. If you can stay 6 or 7 points behind them in January, and then Arsenal goes and buys the two players that I think that we need, which is we need another centre-half, and we need a physical, combative centre midfield player, someone about 6'1", 6'2", in the Khedira mould, who has defensive responsibilities and then allows the other team to go and play. If you can go and sign two players like that and you're only 6 or 7 points behind, then there's no reason to think that you can't go and want and win the title. If we're 10, 11, 12 points behind, then I can't see, if it's going to be Chelsea, I can't see them dropping that many points. So then obviously a prerequisite is getting into those Champions League places again. I'd love to have another cup run. I don't care what anybody says. People might think that the FA Cup is diminished, but it isn't. I was at Wembley, obviously in the whole game. And trust me, people, I don't care what other fans think. That meant everything to Arsenal fans. It meant everything to the players. It meant everything to the players. Theo Walcott's and Aaron Ramsey's and Jack Wilshere's, and Kieran Gibbs's. It brought home to them what it meant to the fans. And it shut everybody else up, which is great, because Arsenal Football Club should be winning trophies year after year. And you can't guarantee it, but you've got to be close to winning them. And that makes a massive difference, I think, to our team. Because although we haven't been flying and playing the free-flowing football that we have been in the past, but there's a different sort of resilience and spirit there. People forget we've only lost, I think it's in the League one game, and that was going back to April against Everton, apart from obviously the one we lost this season. So our team is in pretty good form at the minute.
Well, fingers crossed, Perry. I've got to say, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on. We can obviously find you on TalkSport and other stuff, but just very quickly, what does the future hold for you? I mean, are you back in the game? You getting involved in advising?
No, I do, obviously, the media stuff. I do TalkSport on a Monday and a Friday. Do tours around the Emirates. So people are more than welcome to get on the website and I'll take you behind the scenes.
Brilliant.
I've just launched another company called Play with Legend, where we put players of my era into stag weekends and lads who are playing football and arrange matches at non-league grounds so the fans can get to meet the players, have a few beers afterwards, tell a few stories, because there's not much of a connection anymore between the modern day player and the fan. So so the Play with Legend is going pretty well. Just launched with Chili Sauce, which is a massive stag and events company.
Fantastic.
Life's pretty good, and if the Gooners keep winning trophies, and as long as you end up above that mob up the road, then my life will be happy.
Brilliant, and thanks very much for coming.
Thank you very much for your time, Perry.
Right,
well done, Perry. Good stuff. Thank you.
Cheers, Perry. Just send me that tenner.
See you later.
Bye.
See you later.
Let's go, man.
Don't forget, FK, to mention that the voting for the FBAs closes tomorrow. I think maybe it closes about 7, 8 o'clock because we won't know how far we've got. I know we're in the final 10, but the awards are on the 13th of November. So people, if you can, go and, if you haven't already voted, if you have voted, don't vote again because it's a little bit cheeky. But you can go to our website, bergkampwonderland.co.uk, go to Contact Us, and it has got the 3 ways that you can vote for us. You can vote via Twitter, Facebook, or the website. So go along there, give us a vote, and if we win it, it'll all be down to you lot, you beautiful, lovely people.
And thanks to those who have voted already. Your support and your help is massively, massively appreciated.
Yeah, without you lot, we'd have had 10 votes, and that's it. And that'll be from us lot. All right, cheers, everyone.
Cool. All right, sweet. And that just about wraps it up for this week. So thank you very much for listening. We hope you've enjoyed it. Special guest Perry Groves is absolutely superb. I'm sure you'll agree. Until next time, keep it Arsenal. This has been a Bergkamp Wonderland and Arsenal podcast.
Bye-bye.
Toodaloo.
We've thoroughly enjoyed having you on, Perry. But before you go, could you do us a quick soundbite and just say after us, I'm Perry Groves and this is a Bergkamp Wonderland.
I'm Perry Groves and this is a Bergkamp Wonderland.
Oh,
fantastic.
Cheers, Perry. And we all live in a Perry Groves Wonderland.
Yeah.
Sorry about that, Perry.
All right, no worries.